All right. Well, since people are filling up in the room, I want to go ahead and get us started. My name is Lynn Yeldell, and I'm very happy to be joined by a couple of other teammates and friends at Seventh Scout and one of our clients, COVE. This presentation is going to be going on for about 30 minutes. We really encourage you to put something in the Q&A if you have questions. Be able to reach out. We want to make this as targeted and specific to your needs for virtual workshops, and share some of our best practices at the end. So again, it'll be going about 30 minutes. We'll leave some time for Q&A. But before we dig in, here we are. It's July 8th. And I realized I was just reading something before this started. We've been in coronavirus and a lot of places locked down for over a quarter now. March 11th was when a lot of the cities started shutting down. And I just want to make sure everybody's doing okay. I know we've used these last 3.5 months to adapt and to make changes in our businesses. But I just wanted to tell you all that here at Seventh Scout and individually, we're very optimistic, and we're just continuing to find ways to move forward with our own business, with our clients, and with our friends. How can our businesses survive as our clients are ordered to stay home? Conferences were all postponed, if not canceled. Here we are in Austin, Texas, and we really first felt the impact about this when our Austin Mayor, Steve Adler, ordered the cancellation of one of the largest interactive film, music, and education conferences, South by Southwest. ACL was just canceled as well, and all of them pushed to next year. We shifted from prepping for our panels at South by Southwest for prepping for how do we share now our thought leadership in a different way. We were actually approached by an organization in early April to do a workshop on digital marketing during coronavirus. And this is the continuation of that, those workshops that we started. And today is our last one. We're going to shift to a new way of presenting and thought leadership that we're super excited about. So it's interesting too that I found out this is the 7th one. I promise we didn't plan it that way, but it was kind of a fun thing when I realized that it was the 7th workshop for Seventh Scout. So as a digital marketing agency, we're not an essential business, but we sure have been a busy one. And for that, we're very grateful. Our foundations are in inbound marketing, and you'll hear from Kristen later about the virtual workshop that she conducted with COVE, our client. But also know that the roots of why they're doing digital workshops, why they're doing workshops, really at all have to do a lot with growing organizations, nonprofits, and so forth through inbound marketing. And in fact, a quick stat that I always like to start with, Forrester research says that when companies excel at inbound, they can generate 50% more sales-ready leads at 33% lower cost. I mean, those numbers are super, super good, especially where we are right now. So as we move forward, I talked about the people who are joining me today. You see Kristen, she'll be speaking in just a few slides. And if she wants to go off video, that's fine by me as well. And then we also have on our chat, we actually have 2 other Seventh Scout team members joining us today. We have Eve, who puts together all of our designs for our clients, and thankfully for me as well, because as we talk about with COVE later on, visual literacy, people definitely do better and learn more when they see rather than being told. So thank you so much, Eve, for joining us today and making the presentation look so nice for us. And then we also have Emily. Emily is in charge of our community engagement, and she is the one that will be joining Eve while they're monitoring any questions that you have and any engagement along the way, because again, we want to make this all about you. She also is likely the reason that you joined us today, because she's that good in our community engagement and letting people know that what we were up to as well. So as we move on, this is what we were talking about earlier. We were approached in early April 1st, to do one of these digital marketing during coronavirus webinars. I just want to share this calendar with you all because every one of them were recorded. Every one of them were with a live interactive group, and we have posted them all on our blog. So if you missed a session, it basically started with the do's and don'ts. What are we doing now in this new era? Talked a lot about search engine optimization. We know web traffic is through the roof. How are you being found? Your events, your organizations, your workshops. And then if you're out there maximizing your search engine optimization, how can you look and see what's working? How is it working? We also talked about engaging social media. You bet we're going to have Emily back and do a little bit more about community engagement. We talked about inbound marketing strategies. And then we also talked about how inbound affects and really helps sales teams. And then this final one, our seventh and final webinar, is about building online training programs, really about engaging virtual workshops. How do you take what you were doing in the real world and pivot to this new virtual environment? So I'm going to take these first three slides very quickly. I want to give some context to, like, how long have we been doing things in this virtual environment? And then second, what are just some general workshop tips? Then also, what are some tips for bringing a workshop to a virtual environment? And then I'm going to kick it over to Kristen as quickly as possible, because she's the one who's got the expertise in conducting a virtual workshop and in this environment recent, and she could tell us a lot about what they've learned in their shift to a virtual environment. This next slide I absolutely love, because it helped me really think, because of the large gathering restrictions associated with coronavirus, these in-person events are just out of the question. But thankfully, in our ever-evolving and embracing of technology, virtual events actually started in 1993. So we're coming up on 17 years of virtually presenting events and workshops. But it was actually started with something very similar to this. I tried to find the original trade show floor. But what happened in 1993, these two folks went and did videotaping of trade show exhibitor booths, and they attached the video to an HTML format. So that was our first virtual event. Well, thankfully, this venue mapping progressed to what Slush is using. They're a Helsinki startup consortium, to that map that you're seeing on your screen right now. And thankfully, the technology and the ability to share information has advanced beyond just animating a trade show floor. In fact, the past few months, global brands such as Salesforce, DocuSign, Esri, Zendesk, Adobe, Atlassian, well, let's admit, everybody has gone online with their virtual events. So what's kind of just some workshop tips? Just because your workshop is being held virtually and not IRL in real life, like the kids say, you still do need to remember and build from the basic workshop building blocks. You set the vision, like, why are you doing this in the first place? What does a workshop look like? What topics will you cover? Who is your audience? How many attendees are you expecting? Is it going to be something a little more intimate like this, or are you expecting the masses? Then second, conduct a speaker outreach. Not outreach necessarily outside of your organization, but who also within your group should be by your side. When you have more people at the table presenting, just like I have today, then you also have the ability to reach outside of your networks and help deepen your relationships. Third, create assets, that visual literacy. Now, COVE wrote the book on visual literacy, but do remember, this is why Eve is partnering with me, and I didn't write my speaker notes down here like I wanted to. She helped pull a picture together so that when I'm communicating with you, that you'll be able to, it's a visually cohesive way of containing all the materials and for you to better understand what I'm saying. Also, promote. We need Emily's. Everybody needs an Emily, a community engagement person on their team. We are overwhelmed these days, so make sure you enlist the support of your team members, association, and particularly your guest speakers to help promote your workshop. And a pro tip, write the ask for them. If you just sit there and say, hey, will you promote my event? People sit there with a blank screen and a keyboard, not knowing how to communicate for you. Communicate it for them. Put it in a nice little package in a bow, and then tell them how to send it out to their email, their blogs, their social media, and so forth. You got to launch. Make sure you carve out time in the day, just like our panel did today. We pulled out some time together, and before we came online, we made sure everybody knew what they were going to do. We made sure that we were set up for success. Have some time for your team, like Eve in our case, and Emily watching for the Q&A, and any registered attendees, and if they have any questions along the way. But make sure everybody, just like what you're doing virtually in the real world, everyone knows where they need to be. And finally, it's so exciting getting everything together. I'm having a blast right now. But when we stop this webinar, I'm only about two-thirds of the way through. After this, I need to, as Kristen reminded me, send those follow-up emails, post this video onto the blog, make sure Emily knows how to reach out to everyone, and continue to promote this content. This thought leadership is only about two-thirds of the way of going out and helping people. So carve out time on your calendar, just like I have, block it out, and make sure that you have the opportunity to keep this information going. And also know before you start, as I do, why did we do this in the first place? Am I looking for traffic? What are my KPIs? Am I looking for emails? How do I know if this was a success or not? And next, this is so exciting to me because this is what I visualize all of you doing out there. So what are the virtual tips? I have to think when I'm planning for this virtual workshop, it's important for me to consider a bunch of things about moving from, if I were sitting in a room with you, to this virtual way of communicating. There's a lot of great tips and best practices that have been shared in recent months. I'm going to share some from Miro and from Cirrus Logic, but also there's some other ones from HowSpace and even nature.org. They got into helping their astrophysicists moving online with their virtual workshops. So I figured if an astrophysicist needs help, all of us can admit that we need a little help along the way. So first thing that I had to think about today, as much as I'd love to see your beautiful faces and everybody just sitting there all quiet and dialed in and looking at me, I know that's not the case. Not all people are participating, I guess, equally or just like these people are. Some of you might be sitting in clusters, like 2 or 3 people around a computer. Some of you are checking your phone right now. Others might be in a really noisy coffee shop. Well, probably not very noisy considering the environments that we're in right now, but maybe you're in a noisy house with the kids running around. Make sure that when you're working on your workshops, try and tell people how you expect them to be engaged. If you want them in groups of 2s, if you want them super quiet, and also get ready to be able to present to them in that manner. You also now, in a virtual environment, need to be even more clear on your agenda, structure, break times, materials needed, the tech needed. A pro tip, have somebody out there on your team ready to mute the microphones and ready to be able to hop in because you're going to be dialed in and engaged. Use in-person best practices whenever possible. When you break out in groups, break out in 2s. People can't hide when it's a one-on-one with another person in their group. Use some music during the breaks. What would it be like if we were all sitting right now in a real world conference? We would have some music. We'd have some engaging things going on in the background. I remember also you need to carve out some time for activity and motion. I won't do this for a 30-minute workshop, but if this were to last much longer, I went to a TED conference one time, and on the hour, every hour, they had people jump up and do air squats, which was fascinating in Vancouver, in a room filled with some of the most amazing people that were told at 59 minutes to stand up and do air squats. But movement is important. Make sure just because you're not visually connecting that your participants are getting the best practices from you. Engage immediately all the way through with your audience because they're going to get distracted. It's even easier in a virtual environment. I feel you. I've been on your side as well, and it's super easy to look around and go and wander away. So pull people in and make sure that they know that their participation is important. You can even make sure they use their cameras. That's kind of exciting because look at all those people on the screen. They're not hiding. Also, use high-quality visuals. Now, here is my way of teeing up for COVE. Our guest today from COVE they're the masters of using visuals because they know that the human brain can process images more effectively than text. And you know your audience is needing you to make it as efficient as possible in this new environment. If you haven't seen it already, I highly encourage you to watch How to Avoid Death by PowerPoint. That's the name of the talk. How to Avoid Death by PowerPoint. It was put on by TEDx Stockholm Salon. So it's a super example of how to show and not tell in your presentations. So let me kick this off now. We're going to move into the case study, what you all are here for, I know. And I want to introduce Kristen and COVE. COVE is the Center of Visual Expertise, and it's dedicated to the application of It is dedicated to the application of visual literacy for industrial and service operations with the emphasis on safety. But what is visual literacy? Well, according to the wonderful Wikipedia, visual literacy is the ability to interpret, negotiate, and make meaning from information presented in the form of an image, extending to the meaning of literacy, which commonly signifies interpretation of a written or printed text. So visual literacy is based on the idea that pictures can be read and that meaning can be given through the process of reading. So leveraging the Toledo Museum of Art's renowned art collection, COVE helps teach close-looking skills, create awareness of personal bias, and enhance communication skills. In addition to COVE's modular program, which helps transfer knowledge, expertise, and awareness of visual literacy, they also offer in-person workshops. And training that are typically held in the Toledo Museum of Art. Now with COVID, they found themselves having to cancel all scheduled in-person meetings, client trainings, and on-site workshops. With a significant part of COVE's revenue stream now in jeopardy, they needed to act quickly and find a way to adapt workshop and trainings into the online format. Okay, with the help of Seventh Scout, or their digital marketing agency, COVE now has virtual workshops offering that allows them to continue to engage clients and deliver in a fun, interactive, and learning experience. So I'm going to ask my friend Kristen to come off of her. Yeah, there she is. And so I want to introduce my friend and our client, Kristen Zinkel, COVE Marketing Manager, so she can walk us through the successes from COVE in their virtual workshops.
Lynn, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm excited to be here today and talk through, some of the struggles that we had and, the tips that you offered, everything that you were talking about. I was like, check, check, check. Even I'm picking up new things as I'm listening to you talk as well. So thank you for that. But yeah, so, at COVE, most of our workshops are held in the Toledo Museum of Art. A good portion of the workshop, they're usually 2 days long. We're up in the galleries interacting with, the different art pieces. We're using art, we're leveraging art to teach this idea of close looking. And most of our attendees are frontline electricians or safety supervisors. And so they're not the typical people that you would find in a museum for safety training. So it's a very unique and interesting approach to, help people improve not only how they look at something, but how they communicate it across their teams and finding a common language. So it's a very interesting approach. The fact that most of our workshops are held in the Toledo Museum of Art and that it was shut down resulted in a screeching halt of everything. We had, I think, 2 or 3, in-person workshops. We had client workshops scheduled. Our business model is, we've got these workshops, and then we also offer a license option that provides training materials to businesses so they can take them back in a train the trainer model and teach their employees these close-looking skills, visual literacy. So that's all shut down because organizations are shut down. So we're kind of, we went into a little bit of a scramble mode, and we started thinking, okay, well, how can we take some of this online? A lot of the exercises that we do in the workshop, you're in groups, you're participating in exercises where you're exchanging information and you're working as a team to come find a common solution to an answer, and you're coming, you have to be in this space to sort of realize some of the things we're trying to get people to kind of clue into. So we kind of decided that we've got to at least try and do something. We've got to try and put together a virtual workshop offering. And so with
the slide right now too. I mean,
yes,
is that the Toledo Museum of Art right there?
that is, yeah. So that's the Toledo Museum of Art, and that's one of the exercises that our people are doing, which is called back to back. And so what they do, one person is looking at an object and is explaining the object to the person behind them. The person behind them cannot ask any questions, and they cannot look at the object, and they have to draw based off of what the person is explaining. And what you get is very interesting sometimes, and it makes you think, how did I describe that? How could I have described that differently? How could I have been more objective in my description? And when you apply that to workplace settings, we all find ourselves in situations like that, and so it kind of helps bring a realization to how to be more thoughtful in how we position things.
And how do you move that to a virtual environment?
Exactly. So we had to pivot really quickly. We had to take a look at our content. We had to kind of go through and identify, all of the exercises that we do, which of those could be adjusted for a virtual offering. And so we just kind of went to work and started trying to figure out, okay, looking at this slide here, we needed to start looking at what systems do we currently have in place that can help us get there. Which ones do we not have that we might need to utilize? And so from a planning stage, the first thing we did was we started looking at GoToMeeting. We didn't want to invest any more money since we were losing a lot of revenue. So we just used GoToMeeting instead of GoToTraining, which is their training platform. And so that allowed us to be able to take the registrations and have the interface for conducting this meeting. We also use Eventbrite. So these are paid workshops. So we set the integration using Eventbrite to take payment and registrations as well. And so then once we sort of identified those systems, then we actually went back and started adapting the content. So we took it from a 2-day course to a 2-hour course. And initially, the very first one we did was 90 minutes, was not enough time. We normally charge $1,250 for the 2-day workshop. So the virtual workshop, we ended up charging, I think it was $199. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't give everything away because it was such a drastic change. But we wanted to make sure that there was some value add there. So we took, we scaled down considerably, and we took the exercises that we felt would translate the best in a virtual environment and used those with some modifications. Mm-hmm. So we started looking for, we also, one of the things we wanted to do is at the end of the virtual workshop, our goal is to push them once COVID kind of settles, and we are able to continue our in-person workshops. So we wanted to be able to push them to that in-person workshop. So we didn't want to cannibalize the content that we're using. So we had to readjust some of our content, refresh it, add in some new things. So if they do come to the in-person workshop, they're not like, I already just saw this and I only paid $199 for it. Now I had to pay $1,250. So tweaking our content so that we're not cannibalizing it as well. And then we have course materials. So updating that into a virtual format. So we were able to quickly pivot that course material for them and get that to registrants as well. So once we kind of figured all that out, then now it's promotion. So how do we get the word out? And we Seventh Scout really has helped us build our reach in our website and blogging, and how we engage with our social audiences. We did some paid social advertising, promoted it across a newsletter, email promotions, all the ones that you would typically think of. And then I just got into our contacts and started emailing, calling, and promoting the heck out of it to try and drive some generation to our registrations.
Just out of
Um,
curiosity, did you shift any of the tone and the language in the messaging, or did you, because everybody's in a different environment and you're presenting in a different environment?
Yeah, so we tried to, and I don't know if this was the right way to do it, but we didn't want to come across as we're being reactive to COVID.
Mhm.
So we shifted the language to we have a new virtual workshop offering. So that would potentially enable us to continue having virtual workshops down the road, and have this additional revenue stream as we move forward as a company. So we didn't want to make it all about COVID, but we wanted to try and, introduce it as a new offering.
And I think that there's 2 points in there that are important. First is, you know, people kind of understand why you're not inviting them back to the museum.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of brands have done that. They haven't gone to the, well, in these uncertain times, they're kind of like, hey, we got a virtual opportunity now. And also another thing I really appreciate about Cove and some other of our, stronger brands that are sitting there and saying, this is what we're doing, and you're going to continue to do it. Because I really do believe that in these offerings, people are going to say, you know what? I can sit down for a 2-hour seminar, but I couldn't do it for 2 days anymore, regardless of COVID. And I think that companies do need to keep that in mind, that whatever we're offering right now, we need to be able to say, are we committed to doing this in the long
Well, and I think, and to your point there, this is our attempt at figuring out how do we take our content online.
run? Mhm.
This is an easy way for us to be able to do it without, a lot of cannibalizing our other stuff, and figuring out, can we do this for our 2-day workshop? Obviously can't have people join for 2 days, but is this a direction that we can as a company go in the future and have an online offering for our clients? And so I think this is our test in doing that, and so far it's been successful. Um, once we kind of get through the promotional side, we take the registrations. I've got a PDF of the workbook that I send out to everybody, instructions for how to join. What we also communicate is, we really set up the expectations for the participants that we are going to be using audio and visual. We are going to be including them in conversations. We are going to be engaging them in exercises. I've been on so many calls where I'm the one who doesn't turn my camera on, and I am the one texting behind the scene. So for me, it's we're letting people know we are going to be engaging you, and we are going to be calling out on you specifically. And we even take it so far as we take the registration list and we assign what activities we're going to have them do in advance, so that on the day of that workshop, we already know who's doing what, and start assigning tasks to those people as we're going through the content. So, and that gives them they're aware that they're going to need to be involved in this workshop. It's not just a sit and text
Yeah.
scenario.
Being surprised in person is bad enough, but being surprised on a Zoom call when you weren't ready to turn on your mic or
Yeah. Yes, for sure. So, and so that's on the day of the workshop. And we really try and, the other thing that we do is we introduce everybody. I go through and kind of explain to everybody, when and where to turn on their cameras and their mics, so that we don't have 20 people trying to all talk at once and that kind of thing. So we're just laying out the groundwork prior to the webinar, really kind of helps set the stage for it to be a successful, informative workshop for people.
awesome.
So then, and then you touched on the follow-up piece, and this piece is really key. Why are we even doing this workshop? The whole point of this is, yes, for lead generation, but as part of our business model, it's to get people to sign up for a license agreement. And so this is the introductory touch to kind of get people warm to this idea of visual literacy and see if it's something that would be applicable in their organizations. And so a lot of times, you go through all this effort, and then you don't follow up, and these are our prime leads. These are the ones that we want to make sure that we have a concerted effort of following up with them and reaching out to them and staying connected and having that conversation. So we do that through the survey, we do that through the follow-up email. We offer a discount to attend an in-person workshop, which basically we just take the $199 off of their in-person workshop fee, so it would make this virtual workshop free for them. And then we just continue facilitating that conversation.
Super smart. So, how'd y'all do?
Well, the first one was interesting. We learned a lot after we did the first one. We've done about 3 of these. We have one more scheduled in, I think, in 2 weeks. But some of the things that we learned, include links to materials and the survey in the chat panel. Not everyone's going to follow up with your emails, and sometimes your emails don't even actually reach people. I find a lot of times some of our emails end up people's spam folders. So I put all the links to everything that they're going to need for that workshop in that chat pane and say, please copy these links, please grab this content, even before we get started and do the introduction of the workshop. So that's a huge thing that we've seen the survey responses go up as a result of that.
And I'm guilty as well of, we all have several different emails, and I'm guilty for signing up for something with an email that I don't really use. So like we all know some of the tricks and tips. So I think that's super important to know, just because you got an email that might not be the email that person uses to communicate.
And then just, I mentioned some of these already throughout, but engaging your attendees throughout the call, print a roster beforehand, and then be able to know what exercises or what activities you're going to call people on. Put a check next to their name if you're just randomly calling out, so to call on different people instead of calling on the same person every time. And then the last one, as you're presenting, if participants have questions, have them put them in the chat panel. So this is one where it gets to, you don't have 20 people trying to ask a question at the same time. So that was one thing that I kind of took away as an opportunity. And then our results. So like I mentioned, we've done 3 of these. We've got one more scheduled. We've had a total of 46 attendees, which in my mind, our in-person workshops, we get about, I think, 15 to 20 people. So, this is where we're right on track. It's not the revenue we would like to see, but it's helping, and it's something that is, helping us not only find a new revenue stream, but helping us to figure out how to take our business online virtually anyway. So it's a win-win there. And then, 100% of the attendees we've seen that have attended the virtual workshop would recommend it to a colleague. So that's like a true test right there, is that, you want to make sure you're providing value. If they're paying, you want to make sure that they get their money's worth, that you are providing enough value, but you're not giving away the full inch of the hat.
Yeah. And I think another bullet point I just thought of as we were going through this, that's really important, and it's hard to quantify, but you remained relevant. You remained a resource for these people. And I think that we have to remember to assign a value to that, because I'm sure it would have been really easy. And all of us in the early days probably looked at this and goes, I quit. I'm done. I don't even want to play anymore. But you all didn't. You sat there and said, we need to sit there, because regardless of how our environments have changed, when you work in trying to help people to keep these huge industrial complexes and businesses and organizations safe, it may sound like an overstatement, but sometimes people's lives are in your hands for teaching how to do this visual literacy and so forth. And so, how do you quantify the fact that you kept COVE front of mind in these organizations and remained relevant?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, speaking of questions and comments, I do believe Eve and Emily have been very active, and maybe our participants haven't. Maybe we don't have as many questions, so I'm going to kind of slow things down. But we have reached the end of our final webinar, our final digital marketing in the age of coronavirus webinar. So if anybody does have any questions, I'm sure Eve will come off of mute, make sure we know. If not, this is our email right here. It goes to the team. We'd be super happy to forward along to Kristen or anybody else in the team that has a specific question, because this really is, you're learning from one of the best in the industry on how to pivot from something in a real life environment to a virtual environment, and keeping your clients, your participants and all engaged. And again, that might become a revenue stream that remains back when you're able to get everybody back in the same room. So with that, I'm going to leave it with this. The next thing, and you see it down there, we are shifting to a 7 minutes with 7th Scout. We are going to start spending 7 minutes with some of our favorite clients, team members, and thought leaders and so forth, and just do these little sprints of time. We've noticed that these 30-minute webinars that go on a little bit longer are a lot to digest. And so we thought it'd be really nice to break down into 7 minutes. So I invite you to propose speakers that you want to hear from. Offer up yourself, your company, or your brand. We'd love to vet and see if there's some good opportunities for us to help share what you're working on to a wider platform as well. So with that, I will close out and tell you thank you so much for joining us. We are always here for a conversation. We are passionate about digital marketing. We are passionate about inbound marketing. And our tagline has always said, be nice, make better. And that's what we do every single day. So we hope you stay safe, stay well, wear a mask. They're super cool. And I didn't have this planned, but we even had 7th Scout bandanas made by our super cool Eve. So do whatever you can to keep yourself, your team, your family, your friends, and everybody safe during this. And we look forward to hearing from you and being a part of your companies. Thank you so very much. We appreciate you joining us today.